Hello, YouTube and Facebook. This is Corey Newman. Today I want to discuss Operation Crackerjack, which took place on December 5th and 6th, 1955. This was the fourth National Air Defense Exercise that took place between Air Defense Command and the Strategic Air Command. Much of the information is still classified of various bomber wings and the actual final report of Operation Crackerjack from the Air Defense Command. So I only have partial information about this exercise. So it's kind of hard to put everything together when things are still classified over nearly 70 years. So I have put together about a 4 or 5 page synopsis of what possibly happened from the 32nd Air Division unit history narrative and the 26th Air Division unit history narratives and the Eastern Air Defense Force unit history narrative of the exercise that I've gathered and some other sources. Newspaper articles and such. So, the Continental Air Command issued Operation Order 501-55 for Operation Crackerjack. The main purpose of Operation Crackerjack was to obtain an assessment of the present late 1955 state of radar coverage, i.e. detection, tracking, and interception. It was also important to evaluate the human performance in detection, tracking, and cross-telling and fighter interception. The cross-telling was a critical factor, and it meant that all detections made by humans had to be shared with adjacent radar stations. The emphasis was on the collection of data for use in future studies involving the air defense of North America. In addition to the operational research persons, there was a significant number of scientists and system analysts observing and collecting data on this exercise. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, paid particular attention to the Crackerjack exercise. The MIT and the Lincoln Labs had an advanced set of systems for improving the air defense in North America. MIT was involved with the SAGE system, the Semi-Automatic Ground Environment. SAGE was an automatic control system for tracking and intercepting enemy bomber aircraft. The system could automatically detect aircraft to an interception by sending instructions directly to the aircraft's autopilot. The New York State Adjutant General's report for 1955 stated that Operation Crackerjack is being conducted to test the air defense capabilities of the North American continent during winter weather conditions. This exercise will include units of the New York Air National Guard on a sustained operational basis for 4 consecutive days, thus allowing a practical evaluation of the capability of the Air National Guard air defense units to maintain sustained air defense operations. The Air Defense Command Unit History Narrative for July to December 1955 stated that on the nationwide exercise Crackerjack, General Partridge sent some preliminary data to the U.S. Air Force Chief General Nathan F. Twining. No final analysis or report had been made at the end of 1955. General Partridge said that a total of 243 bombers penetrated, against which 724 fighters were scrambled. A total of 32.6% of the scrambles resulted in successful pounces. Of that, only 19.5% of scrambles resulted in pounces before the bomb release line. 2 general comments were presented by General Partridge. He declared, as had the 26th Air Division in its comments on Operation Deep Rock, that control capability had to be improved. It was essential, he said, that the ability to handle multiple fighters against multiple bombers be increased in the interim period before SAGE became operational. This meant the installation of the AN/GPA-37 as soon as possible. His second comment was that all possible emphasis had to be put on overcoming a low and high altitude deficiency both in the ground system and the weapons. For the purpose of this exercise, all continent north of the Mexican border was considered to be defended area. The defending forces were made up of CONAD, which included Air Defense Command, Army Air Defense Command, Anti-Aircraft Defense Command, Naval Command, and augmentation forces of the Royal Canadian Air Force Air Defense Command and its augmentation forces, Northeast Command, the Alaskan Command. Attacking or Faker forces was furnished by the Strategic Air Command. In an effort to have a realistic test, the planned time of the Faker attack was kept from the defending forces. They were told only that an exercise was to occur sometime between December 1st and February 29th, 1956. The Commander-in-Chief of SAC chose the day. After 2 delays because of weather, he finally triggered it on December 5th. Cocked Pistol, a simulated air defense readiness code word, was declared by CONAD at 21:27 Zulu time or 12:27 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on December 5th. The Royal Canadian Air Force Air Defense Command ordered Cocked Pistol at nearly 45 minutes later at 22:12 Zulu time or 1:12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Big Noise, the code word for simulated air defense emergency, and Lemon Juice, simulated warning yellow code word, was declared by CONAD at 0:17 Zulu December 6th. At 0:36 Zulu December 6th, the Royal Canadian Air Force Air Defense Command went on Lemon Juice. CONAD declared the exercise over at 12:05 Zulu or 3:05 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 14 hours and 38 minutes after it had been ordered. Cocked Pistol had been ordered. SAC penetrated the defended area with a total of 263 Fakers, 236 bombers, and 27 electronic countermeasure aircraft. Two attacks were made. The first attack in the northeast area, and this was a two-pronged assault. A high-altitude wave penetrated from over the Hudson Bay and headed southward, and a mixed high and low altitude wave entered from the southeast over the Atlantic Ocean. The second attack, made entirely at high altitude, hit both the east and west. The eastern attack again was a two-pronged attack, one part coming from the south, coming south from South Hudson Bay, and the other coming over the St. Lawrence, New Hampshire area. Within the area, the 26th Air Division area, during the exercise, 72 of 114 Faker aircraft were detected, and of the 175 fighters that were airborne during the exercise, 94 mission accomplished were reported. The fighter squadrons were all sharp, although there were some difficulty in arousing the initial enthusiasm in the aircraft control and warning squadrons. The Navy picket vessels offered valuable early warning, but because they moved too far out to sea, leaving a dead space between them and the shore-based radar stations. The actual intercept operations were hindered. In all, the 26th Air Division was satisfied with the results of the exercise. The 32nd Air Division unit history stated, if the mission of Air Defense Command can be considered to mean early warning and then sector defense, the 1955 version of the Air Defense Command nationwide exercise can be considered a great success. Early warning was good. There was no question about it was good. So too was sector defense. But there were aspects of this exercise which greatly deterred any accurate means of evaluation for this phase of air defense. Consequently, some caution had to be exercised in evaluating the division's efforts, if only in underestimating its combat potential. There were two phases of this exercise which bear witness to the above. Firstly, mass tracking was introduced to the division a short time prior to the initiation of the exercise. Rather than display each track on the plotting board at the Air Defense Command Center, tracks were grouped together according to the direction, speed, and size to form one large track. For the first time, being the lack of training with this new system, it did not prove practical at the division level. There was just too much confusion in telling from stations to the Air Defense Command Center. Summary telling from the Air Defense Command Center to Eastern Air Defense Force was good and understandable. So at force level, the entire picture of the air combat situation can be displayed without a tangle of tracks on its plotting board. It became a case of the general versus the specific. The Division Air Defense Control Center, wherein the details of the tactical situation should be displayed, only received a rough estimate of the situation. In fact, the situation was so bad during the exercise that the aircraft control and warning squadrons were ordered to utilize former telling procedures. The other phase, which heralded particular disaster factions, was that of the augmentation unit participation. Ostensibly, an exercise such as this will use all available combat resources. SAC brought this exercise to a close in shorter time than had been expected. Indications of the planning which was expanded on the exercise is the following. Both Naval Reserve and stations at Niagara Falls, New York, and South Weymouth, Massachusetts, have made plans to participate in Exercise Crackerjack, with flights in the local areas have been earmarked for and recall systems to have been exercised. Call signs for tactical channels have been established, and pilots have been briefed in air defense procedures. Weather minimums at each station had been established and teams had been named to bring reserve units through all states of readiness and status similar to those used by active air defense units. The short duration of the exercise precluded the use of augmentation forces, and the results were not encouraging. During the short duration of the exercise had a very adverse effect on the morale and enthusiasm of Naval Reserve units in regard to air defense training. Considerable effort was made prior to the exercise to point out to the reserves that this was to be the major exercise of the year. Vast in scope and with a definite role for the reserve forces. On the basis of reserve units that cooperated in advanced planning enthusiastically and rearranged their syllabus training in order to assure availability for the exercise. The precipitate conclusion of the exercise produced a great deal of disappointment, especially among the pilots who had been recalled for the exercise. The enthusiasm for participating in air defense training. The syllabus of training had never been great among the reserves, and future participation will be proportionately harder to obtain. It is recommended that in planning future exercises, the parties concerned agree to a minimum exercise duration, preferably no less than 24 hours, during which all units have been alerted will have a chance to be exercised. As short as the exercise was, there were other results which were encouraging. The 654th Aircraft Control and Warning Squadron, a tenant of Brunswick Naval Air Station, witnessed a communications breakdown that was not simulated or planned. The main power cable to its communications facility was severed by a civilian contractor. The Public Works Department of the Naval Station rendered immediate assistance and was able to repair the damage. Thus, the squadron was able to remain operational for almost the entire duration of Operation Crackerjack, due to the fine inter-service cooperation that existed within the command. The results of the exercise varied to some degree, climaxing in the months of preparation for the exercise. The augmentation units did suffer, but as was intended, if success can be construed to mean early warning, the actual operational results were somewhat anticlimactic. Weather supports throughout the exercise were excellent, causing concern for scramble and recovery procedures. Electronic countermeasures were encountered, varying from 5% to 100% effectiveness. In practical all instances, chaff was the medium used. The chaff was done effectively on scrambled interceptors breaking the lock, than just in jamming the radars themselves. Thus, the old excuse of inadequate height finders, director proficiency, and a saturation of communication channels accounted for many of the broken locks. For backup radar, other problems arose due to confusion between the 655th Aircraft Control and Warning Squadron, the Royal Air Defense Command, Royal Canadian Air Defense Command at Griffiths Air Force Base. The end result was excessive time in getting the radar at Verona operational. This was rectified once a better understanding of joint operational agreements was consummated. The test of the new naval radar picket ships, given the designation YAGRS role in air defense, or Jaegers defense, was in Operation Crackerjack. In November 1955, CONAD increased its radar. The radius of radar picket ships was to be from its control point 25 miles to 40 miles, as well as moving the location of the radar picket ships over 200 miles out to sea. Radar picket ships on the East Coast in the period of December 1954 to March 1955 made 131 training intercepts and 15 active intercepts. The ships could detect aircraft on an average of 90 miles with a max range of 157 miles. Before this move, communications between radar picket ships and shore air defense control centers was 77% effective on average. The 26th Air Division maintained a balance between the effective close control capability of the Aircraft Control and Warning Squadrons and the Fighter Interceptor Forces. As long as they were regularly assigned. ADC Fighter Interceptor Squadrons did not suffer battle losses. The 26th Air Division close control system could not adequately handle more fighters than were regularly assigned on a full-time basis. Whereas the regularly assigned close control fighters were to strike the enemy at 125 miles from the scrambled base, the augmentation forces of Naval and Naval Air National Guard fighters would attempt their intercepts at 75 nautical miles from the scrambled base. The 407 4,713th Radar Evaluation Squadron, ECM, sent observers from their evaluation section to the 646 Aircraft Controlling Warning Squadron and the 762nd Aircraft Controlling Warning Squadron to observe the results of airborne jamming. Acting mainly in a data collection capability, observer reports were forwarded to Headquarters Air Defense Command. After Operation Crackerjack had been run, dissatisfaction with large-scale missions arose at various command levels. The commanders complained that the exercise objectives were not being achieved and the exercise schedule, insofar as time phasing was concerned, was poorly suited for their purposes. They differed in opinion as to the value of each type of exercise. There was a conference at Headquarters Air Defense Command attended by personnel of the 4713th Radar Evaluation Squadron, ECM, on Operation Crackerjack. The purpose of the conference was to compile a comprehensive study of ECM techniques in reducing an aircraft control and warning station's ability to detect and intercept hostile aircraft. Evaluation of the collected data submitted by the 4713th will be used by them and other ECM units in future ECM training and scoring of exercises. Increased capacity of radar picket ships was proven during Operation Crackerjack. The EDF had this to say about the picket ships. The first Faker picked up in Crackerjack was picked up by a picket vessel, and a full hour was available to intercept it. In Exercise Crackerjack, it was picket ships which picked up and proved early warning on the first wave. This is provided by the ship stationed at Point SH, which picked up a Faker aircraft 83 miles east at time 0135 Zulu. This provided early warning to New York at a distance of 465 miles, or approximately 75 minutes early warning time. At that time, at 0139, the picket ship on station SG reported a second portion of this raid at a distance of 210 miles, which provided early warning to New York at a distance of 765 miles, or approximately 92 minutes early warning time. At the time 207 Zulu, the picket ship on station SK picked up a group of this mast-attacked 62 miles east-southeast. This provided early warning to New York at a distance of 380 miles, or approximately 1 hour. The 26th Air Division had this to say about Crackerjack. Faker aircraft launched the first strike from the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 250 miles east-southeast of Nantucket. Early warning was received from the North Truro Air Force Station radio call sign MAN, which put the Fakers 240 nautical miles from the 26th Air Division sector coastline. The initial 3 tracks merged to form a mass raid of 8 Faker aircraft. At about this time and before, we had actual surveillance of the Faker force. The overlapping time to North Truro radio call sign went out, and we were left in the dark. We received no early warning information from our picket vessels on these tracks until after our shore stations had them under surveillance. At that time of the attack, the surveillance radar at the Montauk Air Force Station, call sign Powder, was highly ineffective as a result of the marked temperature inversion. The inversion also affected the performance of the surveillance radar at the Highlands Air Force Station, call sign Dora, and at the Palermo Air Force Station, call sign Hubert. One of the aircraft had come within 180 nautical miles of our station at Montauk. ECM was detected. The fakers used ECM very, very effectively. The screen of ECM aircraft made it almost impossible to accomplish intercepts on aircraft in the raid. The radar sites felt it was a type that they had not seen before. Electronic jamming was effective, conditioned for periods of approximately 30 minutes each in the S-band frequency, and against Montauk's call sign powder. Altitudes of the faker aircraft were reported from 30 to 42,000 feet. This large raid penetrated on a west-northwest heading across the eastern tip of Long Island and proceeded north to New York City. About mid-Long Island and along the line bending southward down the coast, track plots became very spotty. Direction reports were maintained for the next 60 to 80 miles, after which time the tracks became continuous. This was attributed to the effects of the inversion, which was prevalent, and to the ECM activity, which was moderate to heavy. However, no relative factor can be given to affect these two interferences. Additional faker aircraft, singularly spaced, line abreast, was spread from New York to Baltimore. Since electronic warning was timely, subsector commanders were able to make their estimates of the situation and commit fighter forces, but the surveillance information was not adequate to permit efficient close control. During the first wave, the greatest concentration of ECM in the 26th Air Division sector had seen. The CPS-6 site at the Highlands Air Force Station, call sign Dora, and the Benton Air Force Station, call sign Oppose, and the FPS-6 height finder at the Montauk Air Force Station, call sign Powder, were virtually unable to track the targets and fighters. The effects of ECM certainly were a factor in the low number of intercepts effected against this wave. Almost immediately after Crackerjack was over, heavy storms and high seas in the Atlantic forced the picket vessels to request permission to relocate. This request was granted, and they sailed onto a point approximately 200 miles from shore. Well, that's all I have in my research on Operation Crackerjack right now. I don't have any bomber wing unit history narratives on individual strikes or paths yet. Much of that is still classified, as I said in the beginning, so further research is needed on Operation Crackerjack. So that's my initial take on this 4th National Air Defense Exercise. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.